I'm Matt Landau from VRMB, and this is Unlocked, Season 9, Homerunners. This episode features Lukas Krause, who's part of a new generation of short-term rental professionals for me. What Lukas lacks in industry experience, he makes up for with superpowers from previous work, which comes in especially handy when spotting patterns in our marketplace that he's seen play out before in others. I wanted to kick this season off with Lukas because despite the size of his company Skyrun, it's unusually large, they're focused on all the little things that every single one of us should be striving for. And I found this inspiring and even invigorating, like, hey, the smaller companies maybe even have the advantage here. Listen for Lukas's use of guest reviews as his company's guiding force, as well as his opinion on advocacy as survival. And most interestingly, Lukas has a lot of experience in the world of mergers and acquisitions, but I'd like you to pay close attention to the velocity he thinks is taking place in our space, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thanks to Max Farley from Sojo, who one day over lunch said, you really need to interview Lukas. We did, and Max was right. This episode sponsored by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. I kicked off the interview, as I will with every episode this season, by asking Lukas, what does the term homerunner mean to you?
It's interesting because, right, it's always about kind of your perspective, but what comes to mind are just really talented and dedicated local guest services teams racing around town, especially during busy season, to make sure these homes are in great condition, ready to provide amazing experiences. It's just, and I think of the chaos of busy season and the turns and how quick and how this team still finds a way to make it happen for these vacationers who have, spent their hard-earned money to come to whatever resort town or whatever city, and just to make sure they have a great experience. And so I see that. Probably my visuals a little more colorful because of COVID and Netflix documentary. When I hear showrunner, I did watch that documentary Cocaine Cowboys, so I think of the the speedboats going across, which I know is probably not what you want to associate with it, but I think of our teams racing around.
And tell us a little bit about Skyrun, because I don't know too much about it, and I'm not sure our listeners do either.
Yeah, so Skyrun is a vacation rental management company with over 32 locations spread across the United States and Canada. We've managed, second and third homes for individuals who have vacation properties, want to be able to use those homes, but also, I'll say lend them out to individuals to be able to benefit from their homes when they're not there. And so we provide a turnkey service to those individuals with those second and third homes that allow them to, have access to maybe a second home and then defray some of the cost by, renting out when they're not using it. And, probably the most important part of that role is providing great experiences, making sure that home is well stocked, taken care of, clean, and ready for those guests to come in who are coming to vacation, who chose a house instead of a hotel. And so we've been around since 2004. Our founder, Barry Cox, and Steve Falk launched the business, and Barry came from the technology space and built a software platform and kind of stumbled into a business, realizing there was a need for some professional service in the market, and we've been growing ever since.
And as our industry has grown, this question of how to scale one of a kind, how to scale the character that distinguishes great vacation rentals from every other lodging option. In exploring that question, the franchise model has started to work its way into conversations. Is Skyrun operating still as a franchise? I'm thinking back to the first time I got an email from Barry in 2014 saying that we operate a franchise model, and I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah, so it is a model where it is locally owned and operated, and if you're not familiar with the concept of a franchise, it really allows individuals who maybe want to start their own business an opportunity to start a business and do it with support in the framework of a proven model. And so, most familiar people are think of McDonald's. People buy into that and they get the training and support. Well, it's the same thing and I was previously in the vacation or in the short or property management space with a company called Real Property Management that did that. And so, we have local business owners who are passionate about being in their local market, and they're able to provide really local experience and local expertise to guests and support homeowners. So it's a nice model that fits our space well because you have that dedicated individual in the market who has roots, has pride in the market, and really can help share and host amazing experiences.
And what are some of the resources that they're gaining access to when becoming part of the Skyrun family?
Yeah, the Skyrun family, like as you'd expect, kind of all the hallmarks of any franchise concept is training, support. You get access to we have our own proprietary software and revenue management backend, but you get part of a community of, I'll say, individuals who all have a common goal of their own personal, business ownership. And it's a group that actually helps troubleshoot and shares best practices and really helps create a rising tide. And we pool resources together to get an aggregate buying power, whether it be for, things like linens or third party services like payroll. We really try to use our size to our advantage to help create economies of scale. So it's really an end-to-end support and a group that's really behind you to really put you in the best position to succeed.
And so then each of these local managers are owning their own businesses and paying a percentage of each transaction to Skyrun headquarters?
Correct. So there's like any other franchise model, there is a royalty structure that is in place, and it's just as you said, a percentage of transactions, and it does vary based off when individuals came in at different times because, like any model, our business evolved and we add more value every day as we grow the brand.
And you did not grow up training for vacation rental management. You started off in something probably equally as personal, the family business. Talk to us about that first professional phase.
Yeah, it was. So my father, well ahead of his time, a health food restaurant in the greater Chicago area in the '80s, and I had me working in summers. Instead of couldn't find something for us to do or keep us busy, so I was working the grill because I'd be grilling natural hot dogs and natural hamburger or bratwurst and hamburgers. Uh, so on the concrete in the middle of summer, probably 95 plus degrees in front of a grill at age 8, 9. I think my parents probably violated a few labor laws there doing that, but it's such a great experience. You could see just how hard my parents worked with that business and how it provided for us. But the other was the passion my dad had for providing a great experience and willing to go that extra mile. And if something wasn't right, taking that pride in fixing it. And that really imprinted on me. It was interesting at a young age to see that. I don't think a lot of people are fortunate enough to get exposed to that as directly and as early, and it really stuck with me. And because I look at anything with business, all of my customers and stakeholders, they're really the customer, and they're the most important part of it. They're the ones who paid the bills, and the reason that they fund the party, for pardon for a better term. And so, if you take care of them, they'll take care of you, and it's kind of creates a virtuous cycle.
And I've always thought that everybody at some point in their life should work in a restaurant because you do learn about humanity in all kinds of very intimate ways. I'm curious, back in those days, a health food restaurant in Chicago before its time, who are the people who are eating at this kind of establishment?
I think it was just, if I hate to say it, but it's definitely more of a granola feel of people there in the '80s, in
Right.
Chicago like that. Now it's more commonplace of people realizing, yeah, it's probably important what I put into my body. But I would say that was not an attribute of the of the Midwest at that time. And I hate to generalize like that, but I was a product of it. So I was immersed and guilty of it myself. Um, but yeah, it was, my dad was just such a big personality in the local community. He was a city councilman also for 23 years there. And I think part of it too was he just, it was like his extended friends and family. And he kind of just, so I think there was the lean towards people of wanting to eat healthy, but I also think it was the draw was my dad in a lot of ways, that he was kind of the experience and get to share, you know, an hour lunch with my dad in a lot of ways.
So cool. That really reminds me of some of my favorite informal family food establishments, is the people behind it and the conversations you take away with them. Your professional career then took a couple completely unpredictable turns, and I think that's something of a superpower for vacation rental professionals, because you gain this experience in separate, adjacent, parallel spaces, in some cases completely unrelated spaces, eventually working your way up into our space. What did some of those next jobs look like?
Yeah, let's not bore you with the last 20 years of where that the lines and turns, but it's interesting. I ended up, after college in the telecom industry, working for AT&T, a deregulated monopoly, and it was a massive company, and I could do great work and no one noticed. I could do terrible work and no one noticed. And I realized that I really craved trying to make an impact. And so I knew I wasn't long for that world, but graduating after September 11th, it was a down economy. There were not a ton of options available. But yeah, the funny thing is while I was doing that, I was moonlighting on a much longer story of I was chasing this dream to reinvent myself as a pitcher. I was still chasing this dream of wanting to play professional baseball in a position I didn't really play growing up. And so after graduating in college, and was working for AT&T long hours, I'd say not all that fulfilled or happy. I would every night for a couple hours train on this, chase this dream of being a pitcher. I'd be throwing against a brick wall if it, in the dark and cold, and I have to shovel snow to clear a path. I'd do it. If it was getting pitching lessons from a former college coach who was, usually working with little kids, uh, and then I'd get, wait for my turn to get my lesson, and he'd be working with little 12-year-old Billy, and 12-year-old Billy's doing the same drills I'm about to do, and he's better than me. That's humbling.
I was about to say, not to sound mean, but were you any good?
Oh, not at first, but it was the power of 2 straight years of concentrated efforts. And so that's where I took as you said, one of the first winds and turns. I literally went to a workout on a Thursday, signed with the New York Mets on a Friday, and Saturday was falling into spring training.
Whoa, you were really good.
I say I pretended to be a professional pitcher. It was a whirlwind. It was a season and a half of amazing experiences, and had some health challenges because I was in shape for a workout, but not not the rigors of a full season. So after my body basically and the Mets, said, we've had enough of what you can do here. I re-entered the workforce and went back to my food roots and worked for a capital group that owned Quiznos, the sandwich franchise concept, and really fortunate there. I was growing, in space, and got to wear every hat from, leading a group on the onboarding process to procurement to leading a team on turnaround for underperforming markets and restaurants. Then I had coach and teach for east half of the country for operations, which was 2,600 locations, to running the international brand. And so just a whirlwind, I'd say almost 6 years there. And left, started my own business in the I'll say the tax credit space, where we consult large C corps and investing in renewable energy and different real estate activities. And then I finally, that got to maintenance mode, I still have that business, but I got fully into the real estate, into the long term, what I referenced a little earlier at real property management. And it was after the housing bubble. And it was really a turnaround situation. It was a group who was kind of a victim of their own success, had success, and they were managing a lot of national accounts for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and a lot of the banks that were kind of bank owned properties. And we kind of had to turn around the ship, and we grew that to be the largest single family property management company in the country, managing over 65,000 homes. And so it was a great run. And it's funny, because it brings us to here, just being in the space for a year now, it feels eerily similar, our industry in the short term space, that the long term rental space felt like, in 2011, 2012 time period. So sorry to put you to sleep with that long bio, but it's, as you can tell, I've had a few stops.
I want to talk about the power, the advantage of being fresh and new to the industry in just a moment. But I am curious because I think a lot of people bounce around jobs or professions in a similar way. Yours was almost extreme to me, from family business to huge monopoly in AT&T to baseball to Quiznos to consulting to property management. When did you notice that you had kind of hit a stride? Like what was in hindsight the thing about this current path that you're on that reinforced the focus as opposed to continue bouncing?
I'd say as baseball changed everything for me. It was almost like a reset in my perspective. I realized how focused people were as professional athletes in developing their skills and developing others in this team and really winning. And, that's a part of business, but it's just, often it gets subordinated to other initiatives. And so I came back into the workforce, obviously disappointed. I would have loved for the baseball thing to work out, but energized about the chance of what I could do with my career. What could I do to help others and really build something? And so it's funny. I won't say I'm agnostic to the business, but I found the characteristics of what were important to me. I'd love to change an industry for the better and find opportunities to be able to do that, provide great experience, but also develop people. My parents both had deep teaching roots. My dad had done that, and my mom was a teacher, a high school teacher and a college teacher through retirement. And there's just something about building up people and building up organizations that it resonates with me, and I'm really connected to. And so that's where I really seek out those right opportunities to make an impact on not only the industry but people. And so just have a ton of passion around that.
And so once you did find yourself in this new role as CEO of Skyrun, you're bringing these really deep lessons that you learned from corporate relocation housing and residential rental space. What are some of the patterns that you are observing that maybe for folks who have been inside of this world and who haven't had that outside perspective, what are some of the patterns that you see moving most decisively right now?
I think the velocity of the location, and everyone will be nodding along if they've ever worked in one during peak season, how painful it can be. And, the guest is the feedback loop of how effective you are at managing it. And I think as individuals have success, that it can be a challenging thing to keep up with that success and keep providing great guest experiences as people come through and visit. And you can see as individuals maybe get out and outgrow their competencies or their abilities or their processes, where you look at the guest reviews and the experiences aren't the same. Our industry is going through a ton of change. You have a lot of competition entering in space, a lot of dollars getting thrown into it, and technology is really trying to help bridge some of the gaps on those service gaps. But it still comes down to the teams executing, and those who are going to really thrive are going to be an employer of choice, really create a great environment to retain great people who work really hard, but also get a lot out of it themselves. And so I'm not saying ignore the technology piece, but there is really a run on talent. And we're seeing this across a lot of different industries, but we are, service based business, and we're providing great experiences. And you know you need great people to be able to do it. And so I think it's really important even today, as there's been that kind of scarcity of talent, that you are an employer of choice and you add a lot of value, because it's not just about the paycheck. It's giving a chance for people to grow, get exposed to other elements of the business. So I do think that talent piece is playing a major role in who's going to continue to provide great experiences and thrive in the future.
I love two things really stood out to me there. One is ensuring that you are moving in the right direction those with that feedback loop, with reviews, which show whether or not the product is consistent. I'm guessing at Quiznos, if there wasn't standard operating procedures and very specific ways of doing things, I can only imagine the anger you'd see in reviews from people buying a sandwich in one place and then having it come out completely different in another. And the second thing is about the people. And in our space, there is only a limited pool of folks who have trained in this craft. And maybe if you were to broaden that a little bit in hospitality as a whole, how do you guys think about bringing in new talent who is not necessarily in the vacation rental space before? And what are some of the things that you try to bolster in order to retain those employees?
Yeah, a few things. I mean, I think you hit a great point of the feedback loops are just invaluable, and you can always see a strong correlation on repeat business and growth based off of how good experience. And I do really think that is the foundation. And so the way we look at talent is, often we're located in very scarce areas, or say, smaller populations. And so it's not if we're in bigger cities, obviously it's a bigger talent pool. But if you're in a resort town, there might not be nearly as many people that are of kind of a working age or in that place to work. And I think first is becoming an employer of choice. You do that by providing great benefits. You also provide a chance for upward mobility opportunities for individuals and a career path and professional development. The other is, as we look at it, is homegrown talent. I believe from promoting within. And so we have a large company owned portion of our business that is going to be a proving ground for the future leaders of our organization. And so we're looking for bright minds, great attitudes, and believe that you can learn the operational elements of our industry. And it's not to discount or trivialize the experience, but if you got the know-how and you have the passion, we have great training platforms. That's what we do every day. We're a training organization. When it's all said and done, we're training people who are new to the business. So we do firmly believe in building kind of a bench of great talent. And I'll tell you, I always preach, always reaching out and meeting great people and talking. And even if you don't have an opportunity that, the timing may not line up, that you do have that bench of people to pop that you can reach out to, that you've met through networking, through posting of other jobs that maybe they weren't the right fit at that time, to pull from. But I will tell you that talent is such an important piece. And it's where we're spending a lot of time and energy, because it's a challenge for a lot of businesses, but I believe that's who's going to ultimately thrive in the industry, is those with the best people.
Another sort of twist about the vacation rental sector is regulation and unfair regulation that is coming down hard on destinations. And if it hasn't appeared in your destination already, it most likely will sometime soon. How do you, Lukas, and your team as leadership justify investing time and money in this looming threat?
It's about survival. That's the short answer. It's I think it's stepping back and understanding what's driving it. We're dealing with an affordability crunch in our country. Housing has, we've been short on housing supply since basically 2008, 2009. New construction has not met the needs of these large generations coming on in household formations. And so these regulations are very well intended, but they're not solving the issue at hand of affordability. And so if I'm a local politician, I'm trying to help my constituent base, and I'm very well intended. I think it's important for us to have the broader perspective we have of our industry, how thoughtful regulation can not only help our industry but help address some of the challenges that local municipalities are dealing with. This is a supply demand challenge, and it's educating how these homes are being used, how they would fit into the housing mix for staff and people trying to rent, and monitoring or regulating in a way that is constructive, because just kind of blanket across the board regulations without really understanding all the data and all the situation is short-sighted. And again, I think everyone in it is very well intended trying to solve a problem, but we want to make sure we're doing it in a way that is really additive and helpful, because we need to figure out how do we create more housing. It is, there is a shortage of the house on the housing side. And so being involved is helping to shape that, help to educate, help to influence in ways that are constructive. Because the way we approach it, we are pro regulation. We're just pro thoughtful regulation that really helps our industry raise our industry standards. That we're providing professional experiences. We are a value add to the community, not creating any nuisances, whether it be noise or trash that's not taken care of, or parking, but also a friendly place where we can bring the tourism dollars to the market. That's what puts a lot of these, I say towns, cities on the map, is tourism, and it's the lifeblood of it. And it supports so many other adjacent elements of, restaurants, bars, and things as people are there. And so that's why we want to be part of the dialogue and help, because, it's not a spectator sport. If you're in the industry, like we're a part of these communities, and we need to help these communities and get involved.
Are you donating money to short-term rental advocacy efforts in these destinations?
Yes, yeah, we're very active depending on the market, and in most of our markets, are working through their fair share of regulations.
And where are you channeling those resources? Is it to the alliances or lobbying, research?
Uh, yeah, research, alliances, also just time, and lending our expertise and being member, helping with committees and getting involved. I think you can participate in so many different ways. Helping with the fundraising efforts as necessary for, just helping to educate, helping to get the right data, because it's really easy to say, "Yep, here's the problem," and point to it as a quick scapegoat, when it's a much more complex situation, as you well know, right? We always want to kind of assign blame or something on one thing, but usually it's the factor of a whole host of factors that really are contributing to the challenges we have. And so I think that education of what's driving this affordability crunch is important, and how our industry is helpful, and could be in, some of the funds could be used to help with subsidizing or funding, other alternative housing options. But it's a much bigger situation, that is not simple, not easy to solve.
And now a word from our sponsors. Point Central provides smart property solutions for smart vacation property managers. They help streamline operations, protect the property, and enhance the guest experience using keyless access. Why? Because guests are tired after traveling, duh. And being able to go directly to that property with keyless access instead of stopping at a manager's office, this is no longer a luxury. This is a standard practice. Plus, everybody loves avoiding extra trips due to lost keys, not to mention the constant cost of rekeying. Point Central partners stay aware with an activity log of who enters and leaves the property, which helps keep track of cleaning and maintenance crews as well. You can also gain control of your utility bills with their smart thermostats. Schedule set points so guests won't be able to drastically raise or lower the temperatures, for instance. You can ensure the temperature stays consistent when the unit is vacant. Prevent costly maintenance projects caused by water leaks, mold, or HVAC issues with real-time alerts that allow you to be proactive. Visit pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. And Breezeway, whose property care and operations platform helps you coordinate, communicate, and verify the detailed work and deliver the best service experience to your guests. With tools for intelligent task scheduling, quality assurance, real-time work coordination, guest messaging, supplies management, owner reporting, and more, oh my! Breezeway helps thousands of short-term rental managers and hospitality operators increase your operational efficiency and eliminate hours of manual work. This allows you to boost your service revenue. It was created by the founding team of Flipkey, which was since acquired by TripAdvisor, and Breezeway is just elevating the experience at every property they touch. Visit breezeway.io/VRMB and get implementation fees waived. That's a $1,000 value right there. Okay, let's get back to the show. With your experience in other industries, the mergers and acquisitions that have been taking place in our industry are very new to a lot of us, certainly me. And I know a lot of our listeners who are property managers, family owned, operated businesses, locally headquartered, specializing in particular property types or regions and providing these delightful surprises. This is new to us with huge venture capital backed corporations effectively consuming the smaller ones and just building these huge machines. What is something that you observe happening in our space that makes complete sense to you, seems normal to you, that maybe some of our longtime property managers are being surprised by?
Well, the velocity is something that I'll even say is surprising. How aggressive groups were at kind of rolling up and where the valuations of this went. I've seen this in multiple industries, and it it is a consolidation, but it's always going to be very fragmented. There is a place for big, small, everyone in this space. Um, what I think has happened with the number of folks trying to get to critical mass and looking at monetizing these different ways where they haven't put traditional, I'll say, fundamentals on the purchase price.
Like what?
Well, just more of return on investment. And so a business that valuation, if someone's trying to go public, they're not worried about, okay, I'm taking a loan out on this business to purchase this, and what is my break even, and that will reduce what a business could sell for on that kind of buyer. But if I'm a venture backed, or and really I'm trying to get to a certain size for a public offering, I have money to burn and I can pay a premium because what I'm trying to do is get to a growth story and be able to monetize that on an exit of getting to a certain size. Or I'll get to critical mass, we'll shore up some of the operations behind and get profitable. Where traditional acquisitions are truly like, hey, this has to pencil out. if I'm paying $500,000 for this business and I have a note that's $50,000 a year on it, um, how much money do I have to make to be able to make my debt payments? Those are two dramatically different purchasers. And so, given the equity that has flown into this industry, that's driven up the multiples. And so, those who might be close or entertaining the idea of exiting were opportunistic, and I think it was great for them to be able to command those multiples. But as I think we see some of that activity slow up a little, I think you'll see a little pullback in the pricing. And I experienced that in the long term. We were very active acquirers of other business in the property management space. And then there were a number of groups to do it in the long term when we were in the long term space. And we saw, valuations go up a couple of turns, but then they started to come back down a little bit and go back to kind of traditional valuations. There's so much activity here. I don't see this softening to a place of going back to where it was. I'll say pre kind of venture back, equity backed partners. But I do think we're seeing it just like the housing market, where there's probably a little deceleration occurring.
And to touch on an earlier point, the importance of delivering a quality experience that produces a positive review from a guest. At what point is there an unsustainable conflict between growth and scale at all costs and not doing a good job with individual guests? And what's the impact of that on the broader industry?
Yeah, I mean, you can leave some damage kind of in your wake because it's kind of collateral damage for growth. Um, I think it's really knowing your identity and what your objective is. You know, where we're seeking out to do here at Skyrun is really about making our mark in the industry, and we want to grow, and we want to grow effectively, but it's not try to grow so fast that we get out over what we can support operationally. Kind of see it as the teeter totter effect, where you hit the gas pedal and you grow, and then you have to level up a little more on the operational support and have your metrics and stay true to that. One of the things I think that has helped our organization is out of over 500,000 guests, we're almost 4.8 stars on those on their experience, and we believe that creates a virtuous cycle in the long run. We get a lot of repeat business, and people are like, oh, I've been coming here for 3 years, 4 years, and we just love it. They love the home, they love the town, they love the experience. And we believe that is a very productive way to do it. But you do need to grow if you want to continue and enhance and invest. But there are times where, yeah, growth can get out. You can get out a little over your skis, pardon for a better term, if you grow too fast, that you end up compromising on some things, whether it be the guest experience, communicating with your homeowners, understanding what their objectives are, and balancing that out. None of us are perfect, but yeah, it can be challenging to balance as you grow, because when you're growing at a certain scale, that's a lot to keep up with.
And another threat, I would say, to the quality driven, who I refer to as limited edition vacation rental owner or manager, the one of a kind uh, businesses that are doing things with their uh, brand and their teams that don't necessarily scale. One of the other threats is those who are doing things unprofessionally with such a
Mm-hmm.
low barrier to entry. And this is not something to complain about. In fact, I think it's one of the most under um, emphasized virtues of vacation rentals is that you can, with relatively little experience and relatively little resources, become a hospitality player overnight. But that low barrier to entry also tends to dilute the quality of the experience, the professionalism in any given destination. How do you guys think about those competitors?
Well, it's kind of going back to the regulatory environment, right? Thinking thoughtful ways to make sure that you know everyone is licensed, they're paying taxes, help contributing, that they are held to the standards of if we're establishing nuisance, responsive time to nuisances or other issues, that people are able to address that, so that we can continue to provide not only great experiences, but really be a good steward to our communities around it. So I think the regulatory environment is a great way. The other, which I will fully admit, haven't really fully worked on just in my first year here, but I did it in previous industries, is being part of, with the trade association, establishing, accreditations and program. And we built it in my previous for the trade association, and getting a standard and getting those badges out there so people can see who's an, accredited, at that time was accredited property manager. For our industry, it would be a little different, but I think building that would help. Education is great because there are people who are new to this and trying to start their business. And the more education and really helping understand what this, raising the standards of our industry as a whole will help. And the market will ultimately drive the decisions. If you're providing great experiences and they can see those reviews, they're gonna, that's where people are going to gravitate towards. And so if we can help educate and allow others to make that more accessible, I think we can create a rising tide for our industry as a whole, and continue to provide just amazing experiences for those who, opt to use us instead of other accommodations.
And so for you, when you look at let's just say the nightmare headlines of shooting at an Airbnb, or you look at the potential collateral damage of a large company like Vacasa delivering experiences that are below average. Do you view these disruptions as blips, or do you view them as waves that will continue to grow over time?
I believe it's something that's really important to our industry, as you use the example of, certain crime situations or things happening. I look to industries that are a little more mature than us, or markets. Europe is well ahead of us as some of the things they've implemented in the requirements from a security standpoint, verification, and there's a lot of technology coming around the corner. And I think as we talk about, again, going back to the regulatory environment, some of the thoughtful ways of how do we use this technology to minimize the potential downside opportunities that are just going to happen with people utilizing these homes and traveling. I mean, things happen in hotels, they happen everywhere. Our job is to create as safe of an experience as we possibly can. And so I think we're just in the early stages of some of the growing pains of a segment that has gained a lot of popularity in a very short window. And so, this adds probably finer points as I kept referring back to regulations. I do think that's why we need to be part of the discussion and really raise the standards as an industry, of what's important so that we can create as safe of an experience as possible. I mean, this is people celebrating. This is, sometimes, save up for years to go on these trips. Got to feel an obligation to make this as best of an experience as possible, but also, manage out risk as best as humanly possible.
You mentioned some technologies just around the corner. What can you give us an example or two?
I mean, there's a whole host. I don't want to single any out because we have not locked in on any ourselves, but there's verification. There's different platforms for verifying who's entering the home, whether it's leveraging the phone, leveraging the cameras on the front door. The other is having in premise, I'd say monitors that pay attention to volumes, and so decibels to manage out parties or situations. There's others that just ping to see how many cell phones are hitting from a certain area or pulling from the Wi-Fi. That is there a party or something going on that is a, a breach of the rental agreement and what the commitment was. So there is a lot coming down the pike on that. I think there's, as I mentioned, places in Europe are well ahead of kind of the curve on how they've handled some of that. We're really looking at that strategically of how do we implement that to obviously our obligation to the homeowner, and obviously protecting guests as they come through and creating a safe environment. So it's very early stages, but I think over the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see that become more and more prevalent in our, and I say not even just us, but our accommodations across the industry.
With the amount of new tools and um, innovations, You go to a conference these days and it's like it's overload. It's so
Mhm.
many of these different tools inventing so many new problems that you didn't even know you had before. Do you see at least some consolidation of that space on the vendor side?
I do. I think it happens over time, and I'll use a comp. I saw it in the long term space, where often those different, I'll say, one off solutions end up rolling into a larger, property management software solution. A lot of them will just use that as kind of their buy strategy of how they expand. So I saw that in the single family, I saw it in the multifamily space, and even saw it to a certain extent in the corporate housing space when I spent some time there. So I do. Every industry is unique and has its nuances, but I do believe you will see, those great valuable products. There's a very clear buyer for them, and it's often, the big, property management software solutions. But you hit a great point. It can be overwhelming, and especially when we haven't really organized what is important, what should we be doing and protecting, or what should we be doing from collecting identity verification to manage out, not only manage for safety, but manage out fraud situations. And so we're just such an early stage. And so there are a lot of people and a lot of attention to our space and a lot of great ideas out there that can be quite overwhelming. And you can make your tech stack for your operations look very complex. And you can have a dozen different platforms that your teams are having to punch in and out of, and that can be very cumbersome too. And so then it comes to what is the cost benefit of how many of these platforms that need to be implemented, because asking one of your team members to have to log in and out of 12 different platforms, that's a tall order. And so that's the natural, I say, gravitation to consolidation, just because you can only have so many interfaces for people to engage with.
And so you've got these neat patterns that you're able to pull from your previous careers. And I think pattern spotting in this sense gives you a huge advantage. Is there anything that you found about our industry, any dynamics that are so distinguished from the other sectors in which you've worked that truly do make it incompatible with some of those other previous lessons?
I do. The revenue management side is definitely a unique animal. It was not nearly as sophisticated or needed to be, or complex as you look at whether it be corporate housing, long term property management. I think the velocity on how things have changed here is also been surprising. The competitive set, not only when I talked about the M&A activity, so all those acquisitions, the sophistication needed to acquire homeowners as the competitive set has gotten you know broader and more sophisticated is really been surprising. So I saw that trend. I lived it. Our industry, when I was in the long-term property management, was about 40,000 property management companies, and it grew to over 80,000. And we grew to from really like 10,000 homes to 65,000 homes in that window. I feel like this is a much faster version of that change. And so those people who were relying on solely on the reactive marketing tactics, those are not nearly as effective as they used to be. Now you have to really be out there, invest dollars, be sophisticated on how you're marketing, but also have dedicated sales effort. And so I would say some of the patterns are just different, or they're accelerated, because this is a group that is very tech savvy because of the revenue management side, where other industries were maybe able to limp along a little longer without that level of sophistication. And so I think that's probably added, say, kerosene to the acceleration fire that's going on here.
Barry, I mentioned, emailed me in 2014. And the spirit of the email, while I never actually ended up meeting him in person, was I'm coming to Panama, where I happened to live at the time and was running my own vacation rental business. I've heard that you're the vacation rental guy in town. I'd love to talk shop. Barry sounds like he was a really special person, and his vision is now being realized. When he passed and you were um, brought in to be the new CEO, that there's got to be a lot of pressure there to uphold his values. Do you find yourself sort of channeling him? How do you deal with that?
Well, pressure is a privilege. That means it matters. That's kind of how I always view it, and the opportunity. But I do feel a duty to exactly that. You said it well. I did not. I was not fortunate enough to really spend that much time with Barry. I only got to meet him once, before he passed, and he was pretty remarkable what he did from a technology and kind of the core. But bigger than that, Barry had just a love for life and this personality and this just live life to the most energy that attracted this amazing group of local location owners, employees. And so as we look at how we framed our strategic plan, and I will fully admit, very intentional of how do I really keep that alive and honor that spirit and do it in an authentic way, not manufactured. And so it was really engaging the group of how what is our what are our guiding principles, what's our strategy, and weaving that throughout everything we do. We look at kind of our pillars of what we do for our business. Foundations make dreams possible, because that's what we believe we're doing for those individuals who are buying locations, from our homeowners who have these homes, our guests who want to have a great experience, our employees to have the career they deserve to be, and lastly to have Skyrun be the business it deserves to be. And we'll do that by building the best operators in the space, investing in our future, and then the last leg of it is having fun in the process. And that's really where we try to bring especially that spirit alive, of not taking ourselves too seriously, but always bringing our best selves to every situation. And so those kind of are I'd say, the pillars of where we drive our strategy. And so I'd say it's a way for us to make sure that we can measure how effective we are. And so you hit it on the head that I definitely do feel a duty to keep that spirit alive and that energy. But fortunately enough, it was a mix, because I believe you have to be able to laugh at yourself and an energy. And so I just feel like it's passing a baton, and I'm just trying to run this race as best as I can, to honor that spirit.
What an authentic note to end on. I never got the chance to meet Skyrun's founder, Barry, but his vision for technology, and more powerfully, his love for life and his personality attracting amazing people in a way that was so cataclysmic that it lasted. Barry's spirit scaled. What an amazing thing. I think there's a Barry in every single one of us, certainly in Lukas. Someone whose appreciation for connecting deeply with other humans is maybe his best business trait. And my big takeaway is that personality can and should play a role front and center in all of our businesses, small to large. Champion those personalities. Don't suppress them. Let your original thoughts fly. If you enjoyed this episode, come join us collaborating virtually at vrmb.com/membership, where for a small monthly fee, our community will inspire and or motivate you with great ideas on tap, like whenever you log in. That's vrmb.com/membership. Until next time.
I deserve it. Life went on was clear, but now I see the picture perfect. Dying in the